Hello, hello, hello. It's Yannick here, and today I want to talk to you about identity. And if you don't know me, I am the owner of The Right Way LLC, and I am the lead of Bad Girls Gone Good for God Bible Study and Discipleship Group. And today I want to talk to you about identity. And this is really important because your identity impacts everything you do, and it impacts all of the results you're either seeing or not seeing in your life. And I know all of us are looking to get to our destiny. And you guys know how passionate I am about pulling people's destiny out of them. And a big part of that is identity. Whenever I work with someone, this is normally one of the first things that I have to talk about. First being vision, what do you want to accomplish? And the second thing being identity. How do you define yourself? What are all of the definitions of yourself? And the hard part about identity is the fact that most of it are things that are kind of subconscious. Like we don't even realize that we carry these identities. And often what I find is that we'll have identities and we'll define ourselves by things that are in direct conflict with what we want to accomplish. And this is the thing about your identity. Your identity informs how you are going to act and conduct yourself when the time comes. We are all moving based upon how we've defined ourselves. If you're saying, look, I'm a hot girl, you're going to be out in this world just, if you define yourself and you're like, look, I'm always poor, then you're going to make poor person's decisions. And so we have what it is that we want to achieve. But our identity and how we define ourselves is the filter that all of our activities go through. And I wanted to come up with like a little activity or demonstration to show you how this works. So every single one of you all have some sort of seed within you already, right? Everything that you're going to do, everything that you can act on, everything that you can create is already inside of you in seed form. So I didn't have any seeds, but I have some Tic Tacs. So y'all will just have to imagine that these are seeds. And so these seeds are your gifts, they're your skills, your imagination, what you'll create, your perspective, your ideas, your inventions, your everything, right? They're all inside of you. But you have to water these seeds. And you water these seeds based on the actions that you take, meaning you've got to go out, you've got to pitch the idea, you've got to market, you have to communicate with people. You've got to do something to water this seed so it can become something. You have to. Now, the types of actions that you take and how you water it will be highly dependent on your identity and how you define yourself. So sometimes we have just straight pure water, right? And we see it, people who go out and they're confident and they're doing their thing. And really all it is that their identity is in alignment with what they're looking to achieve. But what I find is that a lot of people who are like, man, something's missing. I don't know. I know I have more in me, but it seems like nothing seems to work out. And you're getting frustrated and you're feeling like you're left behind and you're feeling like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe the idea wasn't that great. All these other things. Typically, it's not the idea and it's not the seed because God gives us the seed. The seed is great. The issue is the identity and the filter it goes through. So let's say I have these seeds and I'm watering it, but I'm watering it with bleach water. What kind of harvest am I going to get? If anything springs up at all, it's probably going to be something that's so weak because it's been choked out with the toxic chemical. And so an example of that is, maybe you're putting your water through bleach water and you're saying, I'm really not that smart. Maybe this idea isn't that great, or you identify with being the underdog, right? Like, I may get to the end, but something always happens. I'm never the best person in the room, or maybe you're the I'm not enough person, right? Like, I don't know if I can pull this off. Or my favorite is things just never work out for me. Well, of course it doesn't, because you always say that about yourself. And that's how you define yourself. It is Sheila, things don't work out for me, Thomas. Shane, I'm always behind Wilson, So of course it doesn't, because you have an identity that's toxic to your seed, the thing that you're trying to grow. And so of course nothing comes of it, because you're watering the idea with ammonia. You're watering your seeds with bleach. That doesn't work out. So that's the filter in which all of your water goes through, and it's toxic to your idea. And, maybe you don't have a toxic identity per se, but maybe you're using a filter that's old. And you got the Brita, but you've been running water through the same Brita that you haven't changed out for a year or 2 years or 10 years or sometimes 20 years. And you're like, well, it worked when I got it. Yeah, it did work when you got it, but it got worn out. Things have changed. Maybe the new filter is filtering out some new toxins that they're putting, in the water, or that are in the pipes or something like that, but you're still using one from 20 years ago. And then you're mad when it doesn't work. And it worked when it did. And I see this all the time where people are like, oh, well, that's just how I've been. I've always been this way, or this is how I've always led people, or this is how I've always done things. And I've just been like this since forever. And these are people that have identities that maybe worked, 20 years ago, a year ago, 3 years ago. And the way that you handle things and how you acted and how you led people and how you communicated and how you marketed and your strategy and all these different actions you're taking is not that they're bad. They're just old. They're worn out. They're worn out. And maybe the needs of your customers have changed. Maybe you started your business 20 years ago and, your new customer base, they no longer want the things or need the things that people wanted and needed 20 years ago. And heck, now it's a year ago, 6 months ago. So you've got to identify with something that's fresh. You've got to identify with something that's fresh. And think about it. Everyone who's had a lasting career, we'll take, someone like Cher, for instance. Right? There's certain things about her that's exactly the same. But when you see her, you don't think of what she looked like in 1965. She's not wearing the same costumes. She's not singing, the same style that she did, playing the same and using the type of beats that were popular in the 60s and 70s. No, she continues to change and update, and I'll even say upgrade herself as times change. And she identifies with whatever the newest iteration of who or what Cher is at that time. And so that's another identity that you may have to make some alterations with. And I'll dare say that anytime you want to go to a new level, you're going to have to become something different. You're going to have to become something new. You're going to have to make a new name for yourself. You're going to have to portray something. Your story has to be elevated in some way. In some way. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then you have people that have what I would call the pure water, great filter. And that means that their identity is consistent with what they need to harvest these seeds. So their identity is in alignment with what needs to happen. So they're like, look, maybe that was the case in 1980, but this year I'm an active listener. I used to be really, really hard-headed, but now I am open to new thoughts and ideas. And I used to identify as stubborn, but stubborn wasn't getting me anywhere. So, now I identify with open and breezy. Or, and you can keep going and keep going. But basically, we cannot embrace any idea or any identity or image of ourselves that are in conflict with our destiny. You just can't. You got to choose one or the other. You're either just going to be rock solid in your identity and how you define yourself, right? Or you're going to be solid with, hey, these ideas, these seeds that are in me, they're going to come to life, and I'm willing to become whomever I need to become and improve in whatever ways I need to improve in order to make sure that I get a harvest from these seeds. Because it's not that any of us are without seed. Typically, we're just not doing our job watering them correctly. Now, here's the biggest argument that I get when it comes to this. It's, well, I've always been this way. No, you haven't. Most of us base our identities on, one, what we've been through, our experiences. And you can tell because we say things like, don't you know what I've been through? Or you don't know what I've been through. You know, and I did this and I went through this and I'm from this city and I'm from this town and you haven't seen what I've seen. And, you know, if you'd been through what I'd been through, you know, you'd be the same way. Well, guess what? You are not what you've been through. You are who you are, and you happen to walk through something, and thank God you survived it, right? But we cannot allow what we've experienced to change the essence of who we are. And a lot of times we just have not, and I'm including myself in this, we haven't really taken the time to reconcile with, okay, this is what I've experienced, right? But does that necessarily inform who I am? Should I be embracing this as who I am? Or is this thing or things that I've experienced just an experience? And I get to choose who I am despite the experience. I can take what I want and I can leave what I want. So that's the first way that people typically form their definitions of themselves or their identities, is based on what they've gone through. The second way that we form these definitions or our identity is based on other people's opinions. A long time ago, someone called you stupid. And now you're like, I'm not that smart. There's no way. You don't even realize it. You have an idea that's $1 billion idea or something that's ingenious, and you don't realize it and you don't water it because you don't connect with being identified as a genius. Your third grade teacher told you you were stupid, or that you were remedial, or that you had difficulties learning, or, you know, whatever that thing is. And you, without realizing it, you took that in. And this is very common. Like, I'm not blaming you or saying you're less than, because we all do this. And one of the reasons being is that our subconscious doesn't have a filter. And when you're a child, you know, that filter is even more, that lack thereof is even more just like open. So if you tell a child, hey, Santa Claus is real, they're like, oh my gosh, Santa Claus is real. And yes, this 300-pound man is definitely going down my chimney. And if he doesn't have a chimney because we live in an apartment, he goes through the air vents. And you can tell them that, and they're like, okay. And so a lot of times things were spoken over us or said to us that we just accepted. We just accept it as true. And without realizing it or going back and saying, why? Like, how did I come to define myself this way? You know, that's why I really hate it when people call kids bad. Like, oh, you're so bad. Because you don't even realize that they're taking that into their subconscious. And as they get older, they're saying, I'm bad. Well, why would anyone who defines themselves as being bad expect to do anything that's good? So they think the seed that's inside of them, right? The gifts, their skills, the ideas, the everything is just bad. Why? Because someone called them bad when really they were just adventurous. And, you know, the person who said it was just old and tired. So they just called them bad when really they're adventurous, and they had some strong spunk and a little bit of a attitude or whatever, right? So you have to really challenge these things, because a lot of times it's just someone that told us that, and we just ran with it, and we started acting out of the identity that we embraced. So whatever people are saying to you or have said to you, at a certain point, you've got to create some new definitions based upon who you are authentically. And you got to get really tight with your spirit man, and just figure out, like, no, who am I really? Pray about it. Lord, who am I? Show me who I was before XYZ. Who was I before someone said that to me? Who was I before the abuse? Who was I before the divorce? Who was I before, you know, the bankruptcy? Who was I before, you know, that failure that really, really got to me and hurt my feelings? Who was I before any of those things? And so the goal is, and I just have to drop this, y'all. Some of you guys are going to be mad at me. The goal is to define yourself the way that God would define you, because he's the one who put the seed in you. So if he says you're a genius, you're a genius. Right? And my thing is, look, I'm made in the image of God. So I'm like him. I'm limitless. I'm smart. I'm like that part in the movie The Help where she tells the little girl, you is smart, you is important, you is beautiful. And that's the perfect example of someone trying to get into that child's subconscious early, so that way that seed is planted and that identity is planted before the world gets to her. And we don't all have the privilege of that happening and someone having empowered us in that way and spoken into our lives that way. So what we've got to do is do it for ourselves. And that's hard because sometimes we're embracing identities that we didn't give to ourselves, and we're sitting there trying to pull up weeds, and things like that we didn't scatter in the first place. But at the end of the day, it's all of our responsibilities to heal and restore our identities so that way it's in alignment with what it is that we're trying to achieve. So I hope this helps you. I hope you experience a greater understanding. And if you need more help, email me, reach out to me, set up a coaching session. But I also have a workshop called Healing Your Identity and Your Self-Image that's going to show you guys how to go through the process of disrupting this process and getting your identity in alignment with your destiny. Because y'all, we gotta pull that destiny out of you, because we're waiting on you. We're counting on you. There's a problem you're supposed to solve. There's people you're supposed to lead. There's someone that you're supposed to open up the door of blessing for, and they're just standing in front of the door like this. I know there's something there. I just can't get to it, and I don't know how to unlock it, and you're supposed to be the person to unlock it for them. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please share this. Please comment. Do that, because look, y'all, we're all in this together. And no one's going to come and save us except the Lord eventually. But in the meantime, we got to go through the process and start getting to work and fixing some of these issues ourselves. So thank you so much.